So earlier this year, actually about 8 months ago, we got some new subs. But they're actually not new, they're very old. And they are the Martin Audio WSX-A. And so in this video, we're going to be talking about things like, what are they? Why did we get them? Are they any good? Why are they good? Why are they bad? Are they weird? Things like that. Now, this is not a review of the subs. This is more of our impressions and a bit of an explanation of what they are and things like that. Not a review. We may or may not have a review, but anyway, this is not a review. So the first thing we're going to talk about, of course, is what are they? So these are basically a refresh of an even older sub that Martin Audio made called WSX-A. And those came out in like the early 2000s. And then WSX-A is just a refreshed version that came out years later that has a high power driver. I believe they get a little lower, but they use the same speaker enclosure, the same subwoofer enclosure. And that's where things get a little weird, because these are a front-loaded horn, not a bass reflex sub. And some of you may be wondering, what is a front-loaded horn? Now, well, we're not going to talk about that to a great extent. Here's Alex to explain what a front-loaded horn is.
So that's jumping in early.
Yeah.
So to talk about what horn is, we have to go all the way to the beginning and talk about what sound is. What is sound? Sound is air molecules vibrating. That's all it is. And anytime you hear any kind of sound, it doesn't matter what it is, that is air molecules vibrating. Now, what makes air molecules vibrate? Well, when it comes to speakers, when you have a direct radiating design, aka all normal speakers like normal subs, normal stuff, you have a speaker cone which touches the air in front of it. It moves back and forth, which in turn moves that air back and forth. And then that air moves all the other air and it reaches your ears and moves your eardrums. A horn is different from this in that the speaker driver does not move the air in the room directly. A horn takes a whole bunch of air, loads that air mass onto the driver. The driver moves the air mass, which in turn moves the air in the room. And so if a real easy way to think about it is if when you look at, well, for instance, WSX-A, when you look at it, the entire front face of the sub is technically one gigantic speaker driver, except instead of a piece of paper cone that is moving, it's literally air that is moving. And in this case, it's a folded horn, which is literally just a horn that is folded up in a bunch of different ways to save space. If you have it all the way flat out like this, it takes up a lot of space. When you fold it in a bunch of times, you can save space.
So WSX-A is a single 18 folded horn. And that is very different from lots of other subs like Alex was talking about. So why did we get these different subs? For starters, they were very cheap. Being a Martin Audio dealer, we get access to end-of-life specials and B-stock specials. And in December or November of 2018, there was a lone pair of brand new WSX-A, never used. Last ones to ever come out of the warehouse. Just two subwoofers sitting there. And they were astonishingly cheap. And they're brand new. I mean, these go used for like $1,250, $1,500. These were far cheaper than that. And so I asked Alex, hey, do you think maybe we should consider just selling our ETX 18SPs and replacing them with these? Even though they're totally different products, certainly they're better than ETXs. We weren't really sure. We did research that, yeah, these should be better than ETXs. So we got the pair with the full intention just to stop at that point and still get, our original intention was to get the Martin Audio SX-H218. So we got this pair of WSX-A to replace our ETXs, and they were just fantastic. They were just super good. They got plenty low for us. We weren't quite sure how low they would get. They were super fast, super clean, super everything. They're just phenomenal, really efficient. They're only one single 18 to two single 18s. Plus, we'll talk about this a little bit later, why they're so efficient. They were just extremely, extremely good. And so we decided, let's get another pair. In this case, we'll get them used, and we'll see how they sound. They also were good. So we ended up with 4, which replaced the subs I used to rent all the time, which were some Soundbridge Dual 18s, which were fine, they're good, but we didn't want to buy those because they're nothing extraordinary. And we, like I said, we were originally intending to get the SXH218. We ended up with these, mostly because of cost, but also because they are astoundingly good, especially at that cost. So what makes them so good specifically? Well, there's a few things that I just talked about that make them good. But one of the reasons that they're good, and I'll also talk about here about why this happens, is that they are super fast. And I know you hear people say that about subs across the board, but these are fast in a whole different league. And one of the first things I noticed, because this is our first time using any kind of non-bass reflex subwoofer, is that not only are they fast on the attack, like the fast kick that hits you in the chest, they're really fast when they stop making sound, which makes individual kicks sound much more impulsive and less like a smear, even if that initial kick on like a regular Dual 18 would be very aggressive and in your face. The other thing is that they're super clean, and again, I'll talk about why they're super clean. And they're super efficient. And part of the reason they're super efficient is because they are just one single 18, meaning they take less power. But how do they get to a certain volume with just that one driver? You might be thinking, surely a Dual 18 is louder than a single 18. Well, here's Alex to explain all those things that I was just talking about.
Oh, good lord.
So, why are they good? The answer to this has a couple different reasons. The first reason being, Doug talked about fast. They're really fast. They are really fast because this specific design, which is not inherent to horns, but this specific design is the rear of the chamber. The rear of the driver is loaded into a sealed chamber, whereas the front of the driver is loaded onto the horn, right? You don't have to have, not all horns have the driver loaded into a sealed chamber. Like SXH218 is a horn-loaded enclosure, but it has the rear of the driver, the rear chamber, is ported. It's a bass reflex enclosure with a horn on the front of it. This sub, WSX-A, is a sealed chamber, sealed enclosure with a horn on the front of it. Sealed chambers all inherently dampen cone movement because the air inside the chamber, inside the box, can't go anywhere. It's stuck in this enclosed space, right? So that dampens cone movement. That translates to what Doug was talking about, just fast response. It sounds fast. Doug talked about some bass reflex Double 18s can be really fast on the initial hit, but then they're kind of, they kind of like ring out, and it's not like a long ring. It's like they kind of ba, that kind of thing. Whereas if you look at the sealed enclosure, it'll be bop, bop, that kind of thing. Horns load a bunch of air onto the driver, right? This in itself also dampens cone movement, because you got to think like you've loaded a whole bunch of extra air onto this speaker cone, and air has mass, it has weight, and it has resistance to movement. So when you load all this air onto the driver, it dampens cone movement. Combine that with the fact that it's a sealed chamber on the back, and you get a ridiculous amount of just control over cone movement, which turns into what you hear as really fast, really responsive bass. It's really crazy to hear this in person, because when you're listening, like I'm a huge electronic music fan, and when you listen to songs like that have bass lines, some bass lines that'll be like bop, 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 bop. It's crazy to feel that at really loud volumes where it's literally like bop, 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 like it's just so cool, man. The other things Doug talked about that are really good about it are distortion-free, like cleanliness, like how clean it is, and efficiency. And the reason why this sub has really low distortion is, well, it's just kind of inherent to horns. Like, when you have a horn, you need less cone movement to reach a certain SPL target. So all distortion comes from overdriving some component somewhere, whether you're clipping the mixer, right, or you're clipping a microphone or something like that. You're overdriving something. When you get distortion produced from a speaker, not produced somewhere else, you're overdriving the speaker. And when the cone moves too far compared to what its like design limitations are, that's when you start to get distortion. Historically, a lot of people have enjoyed some types and sounds of distortion from overdriven speakers. Like specifically, I remember people were a really big fan of the older JBL SRX 728 double 18s when you push them too hard. They're like, yeah, these subs really come alive when you send them into program power and you feed them a ton of power. And that's just because those people like the sound of distortion, or that specific kind of distortion out of that speaker. You don't get any of that with these horns, assuming you don't send them too much power. It's a perfect reproduction of the source. So like whatever the information is in the song, the speaker is going to reproduce that exactly. Whereas in contrast with the SRX 728, it's not reproducing it. It's adding things to that signal. You're not hearing just the song, you're hearing the song and the speaker. In the case with WSX-A, you're hearing just the song. The last thing that makes them great is efficiency. And Doug already mentioned this, and I already mentioned this, but it's a single 18, but it's as loud as a double 18. How does that happen? Well, that's because it's a horn. Horns, by taking all that extra air and loading it onto a small point, aka the driver, you gain efficiency. That's just how it works. So to say it very plainly, we need half as much power to reach the same SPL as we have in the past. So in the past, we had the SoundBridge double 18s, which were direct radiating bass reflex. And we needed, I don't know, I think the number was somewhere between 1,500 to 2,000 watts for all 4 subs. So like 2,000 watts max for the entire stack. So what, that's 500 watts per sub. Now we need literally half of that to get the exact same SPL experience, front row, you know, all that.
So those are all the reasons why they're good. They're super fast, they're super low distortion, super clean, and super efficient. They are twice as efficient as a normal double 18. Surely all those things must come with some trade-offs. Everything comes with trade-offs. And this is the part of the video where we're going to try to talk about why they're kind of weird.
But they're not.
But they're not that weird. And some of these weird things are very beneficial as long as you understand them. If you were to buy horns and didn't recognize these things would occur, you might be a little weirded out by that. The first thing is that they have a decent amount of inherent rear rejection.
It's not. Doug makes it seem like there's more than there really is.
Well, bass reflex is basically radiating in 360 degrees. That's just how it is. Horns because they have the horn loaded onto the driver in a direction. It's not like a horn going backwards. It does focus the sound legitimately in that direction a bit, and it is noticeable. If you ever see some other subs like the SoundBridges claim this, it's not really noticeable. In order to get directionality with bass reflexes, you have to do cardioid. These you don't. You get a decent amount of rejection by default. But that brings me to the first other weird thing, which we don't really understand, is that we have not tested this yet, but many people say that cardioid does not work very well with horns. We don't think that's that true, but it seems weird that everyone is saying this. So we're definitely going to test this. We'll probably have more of like full review video out sometime, maybe. But that's one of the weird things. Is if you wanted to do subwoofer arrays like cardioid, supposedly horns aren't as good at that. The other thing that makes them a little weird, but it's actually a very good thing, is unlike bass reflex, you can couple them together to get lower, not just louder. And the reason for this is essentially the larger the horn and the horn mouth, the lower the extension.
No, not the horn mouth, just the horn length.
Oh. Okay, so longer the horn length, the lower the horn functions. And so if you put a bunch of horns together, you're essentially adding their length together, kind of. And
It's really weird.
It will go lower, basically.
But not by a lot, but by a little bit.
And this is kind of weird. If you're used to bass reflexes and you couple them together and all of a sudden you're getting this extra extension, you might be a little weird. But this is actually a benefit in our mind, not necessarily a bad thing. But it is something that's different with horns compared to bass reflex. One other thing we forgot to mention during our original recording of this video is that these ship with NL8 input connectors. And we did not want that because NL8 cables are just a pain. So we switched ours out to NL4. You can get these Nutric connectors which fit the screws for the NL4. So you just take them out, put them in, we resolder the driver, and that's that. There was really no reason to have NL8 because 4 of the pins weren't even in use. So it's not like they were intending you to use this to link out to like tri-amp a system or something. It was basically acting as if it was NL2 in the first place. We could have put NL2 here if we wanted to, but we just went NL4 because that's just what we decided to do. The last kind of bad and weird thing, which is a more abstract concept, is that no one uses horns anymore. And this is something Alex and I have talked about a lot. We don't really understand why, given all the advantages we just said. One of the reasons that is contemplated is that a bass reflex of the same size could get lower, but that's not necessarily true either. So we don't really understand why people don't use horns anymore.
Because it's easier to make a bass reflex. Like they're so easy to make. A horn, you actually have to put a lot of thought into designing, whereas a bass reflex is just a box with a hole in it, essentially.
Yeah, and it's also a lot less material for a bass reflex. Horns can get really
easier to
heavy.
build. Yeah, you're right.
But there's so many advantages that we love our WSX-A.
This one, you said they could get really heavy, but our WSX-A is 200 pounds. It's the same as any other double 18.
So, kind of weird. But this kind of leads me to my final point of this video, which you may be wondering, should you buy some? And maybe is kind of the answer.
Do you want double 18s?
Yeah, I mean...
Are they really cheap? You're getting them used for really cheap in your local area? Go for it.
The abstract downside to WSX-A specifically is that they're old. People want modern stuff. You're going to have clients who are going to say they want line arrays and double 18s. And if you don't give them that, they're going to be like, what the heck, guys? We want double 18s. This isn't a double 18. And you'll run into people who are just not going to accept that. Also, if you want a complete system, like a full wavefront precision system or a full acoustic system, you're not going to want to mix and match an old sub in like this. So we are not sure we're going to get more than 4. We might, but we still intend to get SX-H218 to go with wavefront precision when the time comes to buy a system like that. These subs are great value. They're used if you can find them. They're great value, I should say. They still work great. You can still get replacement drivers for them. They sound good. They get low enough for modern music.
They get as low as any other normal double 18.
They're good. So they're good subs, and we'll keep them. And we're happy with our 4. And there's not much else to say. We're not. It's tough to recommend them or not recommend them. It depends what you want. If you're just kind of putting together a system just to use for your personal use, your personal gigs, you don't have really picky clients, maybe consider finding some of these. Otherwise, maybe don't. There's a lot of factors to go in whether you should get them, but we got them. We're very happy with them. And yeah, that's WSX-A. So I think that covers everything we wanted to talk about in this impressions explanation video. If you have any questions, of course, ask them in the comments. As always, we're Martin Audio dealers, but you can't get these new. We do have some friends who have them. If you want to try to get some yourself and you're in the US or elsewhere, maybe you can contact us, maybe we'll work something out. Or anyway, if you want to know anything about other Martin Audio products, that's cool too. But that's the end of this video. If you have any questions, let us know in the comments. If you have any other opinions about the matter, also let those in the comments. Put those in the comments too, and we can chat about it.
Tell us why we're wrong.
Yeah, tell us why we're wrong. Tell us why the KS28 is a better sub. Oh, it gets lower. Yeah, it does, but also slower. You know, it's also like 10 times the price. And anyway, a nice discussion. So, if you have any questions for the 3rd time, put them in the comments. That's the end of the video.